John Wayne Gacy was a man of contradictions, a charismatic businessman, a Democratic Party volunteer, and a clown who brought smiles to children's faces. But behind this carefully crafted mask lurked a sadistic serial killer who raped, tortured, and murdered at least 33 young men and boys between 1972 and 1978. His victims, teenagers like Robert Piest, John Butkovich, and Timothy McCoy, were buried in the crawl space beneath his suburban Chicago home, discarded in rivers, or concealed under his garage. But what drove Gacy to commit such unspeakable acts? Was he born evil, or was he shaped by trauma? And how did he evade detection for so long? This is the psychological autopsy of John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown. Born on March 17, 1942, in Chicago, John Wayne Gacy's childhood was defined by abuse. His father, John Stanley Gacy Sr., was a violent alcoholic who beat him relentlessly, calling him stupid, weak, and even implying he'd grow up queer. His mother, Marion, tried to protect him, but the damage was done. Psychiatrists later diagnosed Gacy with antisocial personality disorder, the clinical term for a psychopath. Key traits? A lack of empathy, manipulative charm, and a pathological need for control. But was this innate, or did his father's abuse plant the seeds of violence? At just 4 years old, Gacy was whipped for accidentally messing up car parts. At 9, a family friend sexually assaulted him, a trauma he never reported, fearing his father would blame him. By adolescence, Gacy was already displaying disturbing behaviors, including an obsession with power and humiliation. In his early 20s, Gacy worked in a mortuary where he later confessed to climbing into a coffin with a dead teenage boy, caressing the body. This moment, he claimed, awakened something dark inside him. To the outside world, Gacy was a model citizen. He joined the JCs, became a successful contractor, and even organized Chicago's Polish Constitution Day Parade. In 1978, he was photographed with First Lady Rosalind Carter, a stark contrast to the monster who, by then, had already killed over 24 young men. But behind closed doors, Gacy's psychopathy festered. He lured victims like 17-year-old Gregory Godzik, a PDM employee, into his home with promises of work, only to handcuff, rape, and strangle them. He called it the rope trick, tightening a noose around their necks with a stick until they suffocated. Some, like 19-year-old John Butkovich, were killed after confronting Gacy over unpaid wages. Others, like 14-year-old Samuel Stapleton, were random targets snatched from Chicago's streets. Gacy kept trophies like driver's licenses, jewelry, and even slept next to corpses before burying them. Not all who entered Gacy's house died. In 1978, Jeffrey Rignall survived being chloroformed, whipped, and raped. He later identified Gacy's car, leading to an arrest, but police dismissed it, believing Gacy's lies. A fatal mistake. Gacy's psyche was a labyrinth of contradictions. He claimed to have 4 personalities: John the contractor, Pogo the clown, the politician, and Jack Hanley, a violent alter ego he blamed for the murders. Psychiatrists debated whether this was real or a ploy to evade responsibility. Forensic psychiatrist Dr. Helen Morrison spent years interviewing Gacy. She concluded he was a pure psychopath, incapable of remorse. He saw his victims as objects, even joking, "You guys are better credit risks than my victims. At least you're alive to pay me back." On death row, Gacy painted hundreds of disturbing artworks, including self-portraits as a clown. Some sold for thousands, a macabre irony he relished. Was this narcissism or a subconscious cry for attention? On May 10, 1994, Gacy was executed by lethal injection. His last words? "Kiss my ass." No apology, no remorse. Just the final act of a man who never saw his victims as human. Decades later, mysteries remain. 5 victims like Body 28, a teen buried in Gacy's yard, are still unnamed. Recent DNA advances identified John Mowry and William Bundy, but others await justice. did Gacy act alone? Employees like Michael Rossi and David Cram knew about the crawl space. Some victims vanished while Gacy was out of state. And why did he tell police? That's for you guys to find out when asked about more bodies. John Wayne Gacy's legacy is a warning. Psychopaths don't look like monsters, they look like your neighbor, your coworker, even the clown at a child's party. His victims, boys like Robert Piest, men like Francis Alexander, deserve to be remembered not as numbers, but as lives stolen by a man who hid in the light.